We are live. K&K Sports Show, last K&K Sports Show of 2022. Uh, One person is missing, but he's on a much not needed, but much deserved vacation with his wife Jenny Hoops. So let's, he might come on and say hello to us a little later, fellas. Let's hope he can. In the meantime, I got my other three usual suspects. I'll start with the water boy, Paul Rosen.
I'll take that as a compliment. Good evening, gentlemen. Good to be here. Last show of the year. Looking forward to the weekend with the college playoffs, with the winning in New York Football Giants, and a new year.
And you'll know where I'm going with this in a second, Paul. Our very own Billy
hmm
Madison, Ryan Scoop Wooders is with us.
How y'all doing? Excited to get to the little bit of preview for the NFL and college football, and also recap some of the crazy stuff that happened over the course of this year. It's been a keep you on your toes, never a dull moment kind of year in across all sports, pro and college. Looking forward to dissecting it all with you guys.
And last but not least, Happy Gilmore himself, Carson Shears, with us.
Hey, what's up, guys? Hopefully, all of you guys had a great holiday. Crazy 2022 year. Looking forward to many shows with you guys in 2023. Let's get rocking and rolling.
Absolutely. So tonight we got our end of the year review a little later, and we're also going to do some NFL and college football talk. So let's get the NFL rolling. We'll start with the playoff picture. We got 2 weeks left. A lot of we got the top three teams. Ryan's Eagles, still on top. We got the 49ers learning that they're learning how to win without with Mr. Irrelevant over there, Brock Purdy, and number three seed the Vikings. Still got my questions on them. Our Giants, Paul, just fell short in a very very close contested game over there, so I'm not sold on them yet. But those are the top three fighting for 1, 2, and 3 seed, and then we got the Buccaneers hanging in there at number four. Panthers are still on their tail. Five are our Giants, winning in, like Paul said in his intro. Six, the Commanders, they're hanging on barely. And then you got Carson's Lions hanging in still. Packers coming out of nowhere, and the Seattle Seahawks. So I'll start with Carson. First question I have will be top three seeds going in. Carson, is it going to be Eagles, 49ers, Vikings, or is anything going to change?
I could see the 49ers somehow pass the Vikings. I think it's going to be the way it is. I think the Vikings, I mean, they've looked really well. I said last week that the Giants would make it a close game, and it came down to a last second field goal. Luckily, unfortunately, in the wild card race, everybody lost and the Lions couldn't capitalize. If the Lions would have won, we would have been the 7 seed right now, but nothing changed in the wild card standings. But I think it's going to be the same. I think it's going to be Eagles 1, Vikings 2, 49ers 3 seed.
Paul, what are your thoughts on the Vikings? Are they a vulnerable top team in this NFL? Are they going to be? Do you think they can make a lot of noise in the playoffs, or are they going to be upset alert?
I was not impressed. I think they're a fraud team, and I'll tell you why. I'm not impressed with Kirk Cousins. Never have been, number one. Number two, their defense to me is very suspect. The Giants took it to them. They could have won that game, except for a couple of turnovers. And if the Giants can move the ball in the air against them, and let's face it, we don't have a great passing offense, then you come to the playoffs, that's going to be a real big problem for them. So I'm not sold on the Vikings. I could see somebody beating them in the first round.
Let's say hello to our good friend Jimmy Eisenman, saying what's up. Go Giants, baby. He's a big Giant fan, Paul.
Go, Jimmy.
Believe this is Mr. Valenti, because I know none of us would say this comment. It's coming in as the K&K Sports Show, so I believe it's Kurt. What's up, boys? Very, very excited for this Broncos head coach candidacy.
Yeah.
That can only be one person.
Yeah,
And then Jimmy's also saying the Vikings are frauds. Uh, Ryan, let me ask you a question about your Eagles.
What's up?
Is there concern in Philadelphia? Jalen Hurts is hurt. Your defense gave up a lot of points to Dallas. I think the offense played well, but I'd like your thoughts on your Eagles again versus Dallas. Is there a little concern heading into these last couple of weeks and into the playoffs?
I think anytime your quarterback potentially goes down, it's the most important position in sports, as we all know. I think anytime you got your number one guy who was an MVP caliber season, and I believe should be the MVP, goes down, I think that there's cause for concern. That being said, as far as I'm aware, they're going to, take it day by day with him. They haven't ruled him out for this week yet. However, if they do believe that he needs more rest, I would hope that they would make the long term play to shut him down this week. Again, it only is going to take one win or a couple of other things to happen for them to secure the number one seed, and their eyes have got to be further down the road than that. We're talking about February, not the last week of December. So. I do believe there should be concern with Hurts and with a couple of guys who got banged up on defense, but got to get Hurts healthy, and defense is next man up. We brought in Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, among other guys as depth to be able to sustain losses on the defensive front. Did a couple of similar moves in the back end. This is what happens. Is sometimes it's your depth that is going to make or break how far you go in the playoffs. I mean, Philly proved that as well as anybody with their Super Bowl run 5 years ago.
Absolutely. Paul, I got a question for you from Jimmy Eisenman. Paul, what did you think about the incomplete pass that was called a catch originally?
Which pass was that again?
I believe he's talking about the Jimmy, are you talking about the interception, or which one are you talking about? Refresh our memories.
Yeah.
In the meantime, I'm going to go back to Carson and just going to ask him, Lions, Carson, do they find a way to get in, or are they going to be on the outside watching playoffs in January?
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, like I just said, when the opportunity's on the line against the Panthers and you just get destroyed in the run game. I mean, we looked horrible on the road. We just look like a completely different team. We come back home now against the Bears, so we have to win out. If we lose, we're officially eliminated from the playoffs. So we have to win out. We got to beat Chicago this Sunday, and it could be a really interesting game 2 weeks from now at Lambeau Field against the Packers, because the Packers are the same record as us right now. And then we also need the Seahawks and the Commanders to go at least 1-1. So if we win out and the Hawks and the Commanders split, we would jump them as the 7 seed. But I think it's gonna come down to that Green Bay game. That's where all the marbles are gonna be on the table. You got to step up and you got to win the game. The Lions look like a completely different team on the road than they are on home field surf at Ford Field. So it'll be interesting. I would give us a 50-50 shot, but I think it's going to all come down to that Packers game at Lambeau in 2 weeks.
Paul, same question. Giants in or out?
Oh, without question. If I was a betting man, this is the week I'm putting my money on the Giants. I would find it hard to believe that they will not win this game on Sunday. Not to take anything away from a Colts franchise, but you're at home. Number one, the fans will go crazy. They win, they're in. They don't have to worry about any kind of losses by any other teams. Hey, it's all in their hands right now. I expect them to step up big time, and I will be extremely disappointed if they don't come away with the win on Sunday.
Here's the Jimmy was talking about, Paul. You can answer this. The catch by Slayton that was called a catch but overturned. The ball did hit the ground, but the rule is you can't use the ground to secure the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the play. The officials have messed up so many games this year and so many calls, but I think they got that one right, unfortunately. So I can't argue with that.
Fair enough. I agree. I do agree, Paul. Let's Let's ask the next question. Move to the AFC, Ryan. Bills, Chiefs, 2 seed, Bengals, 3 seed. Is that how it's going to finish? Or who's going to be the 1, 2, and 3 going forward?
I think both the top two teams that you just mentioned, Buffalo and Kansas City, have proven that they're, I don't want to say suspect, that seems a little bit extreme, but have proven that as high end as they have, they are not insurmountable by any stretch. I think based on what I've seen, I believe that Buffalo has the edge over Kansas City. And I think that I've been more impressed with some of their performances against better teams than I have with Kansas City. And I do think that if you're asking me right now who the top three are, I think Buffalo, Kansas City, and Cincinnati seems like a pretty safe bet. I have a hard time seeing anybody else in the AFC supplanting one of those top three teams.
Jimmy's also mentioning talking about college football now. How about the Wolverines? It's going to be interesting to see with all this Jim Harbaugh talk. You know how if they can come out and perform against TCU. Sometimes teams listen to all that stuff and heads might not be there. So let's see what happens. There's a lot of rumors going around Denver, and he wants back in the NFL, and unfortunately, it always happens right before their bowl game. I'd like to see Michigan and Georgia for sure. Mark Calderio, as soon as talk about the Wolverines, he must know. Yeah, buddy, he is not going anywhere. What's up, Mark? Good to hear from you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you. Paul, actually, I'll go to Carson on this. Jaguars or Titans, Carson?
Man, I would go with the Jaguars now because they just announced that Derrick Henry isn't going to be playing for Thursday Night Football, and I think that gives the Jags an advantage. We'll see where his status is, Derrick Henry is, because they got a big-time divisional matchup. Could be for the division next week, but I would go with the Jaguars. They have come on the rise recently. I think Trevor Lawrence is a stud. I think Travis Etienne, I think he's legit, and they got a nice young secondary. They got Trayvon Walker, who's been banged up, but they still got number one overall pick from the draft last year. I would say the Jaguars are they're on the rise. I think all the momentum's going their way for the Jags. I'm happy for them.
Yeah, you know what, Carson, I agree. And Derrick Henry's now doubtful. Tannehill's out. They're in trouble in Tennessee, and they Jaguars are definitely trending up for sure. Let me ask the three of you this question, and then we'll get into our year in review. I'll start with Paul. Patriots, Jets. Oh, let me start like this. Tua Tagovailoa, another concussion. He's out for this Sunday. Terrible situation going on over there. They're hanging on for their playoff hopes. They're right now the 7th seed. Patriots, Jets, Titans, and Steelers are all in the hunt, Paul. Who has the best chance out of those four to get in the Dolphins?
I'll tell you. To say that Kurt's boy Teddy Bridgewater hinges the Dolphins' chances to get in.
You could say the Dolphins. You could still say the Dolphins if you want to still say the Dolphins.
Yeah.
You can.
I mean, I know they're playing up in New England this week, and you don't know which team is going to show up. The team that played the first half against the Packers last week, or the team that played the second half. Of course, it was 2 or 3 interceptions that didn't help, and the fact that he's out now. I'm gonna still say I think the Dolphins do it because I think it'll come down to that last week of the season, and I don't see the Jets beating them down there. I really don't. So I'm gonna stick with the Dolphins.
You know what, Paul? I'm with you. All gods, they're really sticking it to Kurt. So Teddy Bridgewater was he wanted Bridgewater out of there. Is going to get those Dolphins into the playoffs these last 2 games. Carson.
Yeah, I would say the Patriots, only because it's Bill Belichick. He's been in these late primetime situations where they gotta step up, and creep their way back into the playoffs, I would go coaching and experience. I think that defense is legit on the Patriots, especially that D line. Mac Jones, he's been kind of the talk of the town recently because there's been some plays that he's made that have not been too kind, and people are kind of speculating him as a dirty player now. So we'll see where that goes, possibly in the next couple weeks here. But I would go with the Patriots, only because I think their defense is stacked.
Ryan, how about you? Who's in?
I think at this point, for this question, you said, for just to make sure I have the 4 teams correct: Patriots, Jets, Dolphins,
Jets, Titans, Steelers. In there.
Patriots.
Do any of them have a out of those 5?
I'm going to have to go along with Carson. I think that based on not only coaching but quarterback play, I'm not a huge Mac Jones fan. I mean, I'm as an Alabama fan, I hope that he does well, but I'm not the biggest fan of him as a quarterback. But who are my alternatives? You're giving me Mike White, who you're giving me Kenny Pickett, who I'm not a fan of. You're giving me Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, I think of those, if you're going to give, if I have to pick someone to, of those 5, I think it's going to be Mac Jones and Bill Belichick. I think as a quarterback coach combo, I trust those 2 more than anybody else.
Absolutely. All right, guys, I'm going to end the NFL there. I want to get this done in roughly 10 minutes so we can do our year in review for the last hour. Maybe just some predictions over, we got the New Year's 6 bowls coming up, so why don't we go over them? Paul, Georgia, Ohio State, what are you expecting in this game?
I said it
and a prediction.
a couple of weeks. Yeah, I said it a couple of weeks ago. Georgia is one of the best teams I've seen in college football in a long time. As crazy as it sounds, I think their defense, even after losing 5 or 6 first-round picks last year, might even be better this year. And their offense can only match their defense. The offense has been phenomenal also. Last year, when they were playing for the championship, there was a question. This year, without a doubt, their offense is excellent. I don't see a close game. I really don't. I think with all these weeks to prepare, I think they're going to run over Ohio State. I really do. I don't think it's going to be a close game. I think they're going to win in double digits, and Georgia's going to win that game.
Let me catch up on a couple comments. Jimmy thinks Michigan-Georgia rematch. He also says the Titans are done and Bridgewater and the Finns win. Our good friend Stephen Waldman saying hello. What's up, Steve? Thanks for joining us tonight. And I'll ask Carson same thing. If you want a prediction on the game, what are you expecting out of this?
Yeah, no, I'm with Paul. I think Georgia on both sides of the ball is just way too dominant for Ohio State. And like when Ohio State fell from, I believe it was 2-5 or 3-5 when they got blown out by Michigan, they got a really good draw because they got lucky that USC was the team that lost and killed their playoff hopes, and they couldn't put Bama in because Bama was 2 losses and Ohio State was right there with 1 loss, so they kind of slid right in. But I don't think they deserve to be in the playoff. I think Georgia's going to roll them over. I forgot, we can talk tomorrow in the Wits and Wagers shows about our bets, but I would go with the Bulldogs as well. I think Kirby Smart, they're gonna go back-to-back national champions. I think Stetson Bennett, he's kind of was the overlooked Heisman candidate. He's got a tremendous season behind him, and I think they're like Paul just said, it's crazy that they had all those first rounders on that defense last year, and they might be better this year than they were last year. I'm going to go Bulldogs.
I'm with you guys. I'm going to go Bulldogs as well, and I think you may see like a slow first quarter from Georgia, maybe, but that's it. And then Georgia will get back on track because they've been off for a month. That's the only hope that Ohio State can have. But Ohio State's been off for a month too. So if one team's going to come out flat, then you got to say the other team's going to come out flat. So I'm all over Georgia as well in this one. And I agree with Carson. Ohio State, they shouldn't even be there. Ryan.
Okay, so I do think that obviously Georgia has, a defense for the ages. I think that, Kirby Smart, a disciple of Coach Saban over at Alabama, is obviously cementing himself as one of the great college coaches of this time period. I do think that there's a chance that there could be a small. First of all, are we doing outright or are we doing ATS?
No, just as outright. Tomorrow's the wits and wagers. That's okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're just thoughts and prediction on the game.
Yeah. So I think that it's gonna be a relatively low scoring game. I think Georgia. I think obviously has a better defense, but I do like Ohio State's offense. And I don't think there's a major mismatch here on special teams where anything could get too weird in that regard, like we've seen in some games earlier this season. I do think Georgia's definitely going to win this game, but I think that Ohio State's not going to let it be a complete runaway, I don't think.
Fair enough. Let's move on to the next playoff game. Let's do Michigan TCU. Carson, I know you're up there in Michigan. What's the hype up there? Is everybody getting excited about this Michigan Wolverine team? I know you're Michigan State, but let us know how it is up there in Michigan.
Yeah, it's a madhouse. It's all over the sports talk local radio stations here. All the bars are going to be sold out for New Year's Eve. It's just kind of the talk of the town right now. And like you guys just said, Jim Harbaugh, he's got to step up to the plate. This is the second time back-to-back years where they've made the playoff. They got blown out by Georgia last year. They get a favorable matchup with TCU. It's going to be an interesting tale. You got Max Duggan, who I think is a pretty strong quarterback for TCU. They got that kid, I can't remember his name, but that wide receiver who's going to be a first rounder on TCU as well. Again, it's I think Michigan, when they lost Blake Corum, everybody thought, okay, they're done. There's the best player, but Donovan Edwards has stepped up to the plate. He's been running nonstop. I think their defense is legit. I've been really impressed. It kills me to say this because I hate Michigan, but I got to give them their respect. They have a legit shot to win this thing, and I think they're going to win the game. I think it's 6.5 right now towards Michigan, so I would lay it, and I think it's going to be Michigan Georgia for the national title.
Got another person rooting for the Michigan Wolverines. Our good friend Dave Slade out there in Colorado. Willow Blends and Seasonings. If you like some rub on your barbecue meats, vegetables, etc., go check his company out there. Willow Blends and Seasonings. Welcome, Dave. Thanks for joining us tonight. Ryan, what are your thoughts on this game?
Well, first, I got to start eating dinner before the show because every time you plug those seasonings, I'm like, oh, dang, I really should eat dinner. So unfortunately, I looked at the schedule and I didn't see 10 minutes for Scoop to talk about why TCU over Alabama was a bad decision. So aside from that, I will say I think that, I don't see TCU winning this game at all. I don't think they should have been in the Final Four over Alabama. I looked at the spread. This opened, 9 points for Michigan. Even now, it's still over a touchdown for Michigan. I don't know what kind of a 2-3 game is supposed to be more of a over a touchdown differential. I haven't understood this decision since it was made. I'm easily going with a Michigan victory here. I'm sorry, Carson.
Paul.
Well, I'm not an Alabama fan, and I think they made the right choice. And TCU being in there, they were undefeated until the championship game, so you can't take that away from them. That being said, I think Michigan has too much talent. I like Duggan as a quarterback. I think their offense is pretty good, but they haven't played a team as deep and stacked as Michigan has on both sides of the ball. I think they have right now rolled into the playoffs at the perfect opportunity for them. I also see, I agree with Carson, that it's going to be Georgia, Michigan in the finals. And this game, I think it'll be also a 30 to 17, 30 to 20 type of game.
Dave's asking where busy trying to justify Russell Wilson. He's actually, that what I would have thought too, but he's actually on a little mini vacation with his wife down in Atlantic City for a couple of days. He'll be back tomorrow. He's gonna try and hop on for a few minutes tonight. We'll see if he can make it. But much deserved vacation for him and his wife. Well, more his wife.
He's popping some Prosecco to celebrate the Nathaniel Hackett decision.
Yeah. I think I'm going to agree with you guys. Michigan, TCU, but I want to get into we'll do some predictions, and then we'll let Ryan talk about Alabama real quick so we can get into our year in review. But I agree with Michigan. I think they beat TCU. Uh, we'll go over Bama real quick, and then we'll do predictions. But I'm curious to see, because we're going to see now. TCU lost to Kansas State. Now Alabama gets Kansas State. We're going to see if Alabama blows out Kansas State. Maybe the talk is they deserve to be in the playoff. A close, competitive game. Kansas State beats them. There's no talk. Ryan, we'll give the floor to you. Bama, what you thinking in this game?
You actually just took the first point I was going to make, so thank you for making that point. Another thing, too, that I'm just looking at here. Now, again, we have to see exactly how many of the stars, if you want to say it, actually get full time in the game. It sounds like it's going to be pretty, first string straight through, but, we'll see. This doesn't feel like a game that Coach Saban would, want to. I feel like he's the kind of coach I feel like wants to stick it a little bit to the people who kept them out. And like you said about Kansas State, I'm not taking anything away from Kansas State. They've had a good season. They've got, probably a top 15 defense in college football, but I don't see, I don't really see this game being, it went from I'm looking here. I think it was a 15-point swing, if I'm doing the math correctly right here, from where it was to now. I don't know how that happens. I don't know if I've ever seen that. But I just, like you said, barring anything but a narrow win for Kansas State, or even keeping it close, which I don't expect, I hope that there is some real reflection after this game. And again, if Kansas State wins, I will gladly eat my words. I just... I think it's kind of hard to look at, it's 2 losses, you're automatically out. Look at the individuality of these games, who they were against, what the situations were, what the circumstances were that led to those 2 narrow losses compared to what happened in some of these other games. I just, and again, people will say I'm a homer, and I will respect that if that's how it's being labeled, but I just think that the numbers that you're looking at, I think that there's plenty of data to back up my case here.
Fair enough.
Let me just say something. But if, using your words, TCU was undefeated, went to the championship game in their conference,
Yep.
and lost on a field goal.
Mm-hmm.
So, to look at that season as a whole,
mm-hmm.
you've got to give them credit that, they get to the championship game losing at the last second on a field goal.
I do give them credit. I think they've had a fantastic season. I just don't think that this game coming up, where it's going to be TCU versus, let me double check again.
Michigan.
TCU versus Michigan. I just don't think that's going to be as good of a game. If you're trying to figure out what the 2 best games and what the possibility is for who can potentially beat Georgia in the championship, if you're making the decision based on that as to what's going to give you the 3 best games to end the college football season, I don't see the argument for TCU being a better choice than Alabama. I just don't.
All right, let's do this, guys. We want to get into the year in review, so why don't we just we'll talk more about these games on Wits and Wagers tomorrow. Paul, Penn State, Utah, just give me a winner.
Penn State.
Tennessee, Clemson.
Asking me?
Yeah, I'm going to just go straight down the line.
Clemson.
Cotton Bowl, USC, Tulane.
Caleb Williams plays USC.
Bama, Kansas State.
Bama.
I'm going to go Bama. I'm going to go Utah big. I'm going to go Tennessee over Clemson. And I'm going to go with the Cinderella Tulane Green Wave. Let's go. Carson. Penn State, Utah.
Utah.
Tennessee, Clemson.
Going Clemson.
Bama, Kansas State.
I'm going to go Kansas State.
And USC, Tulane.
Tulane.
Ryan, Penn State, Utah.
Utah.
Tennessee, Clemson.
I'm going to go with Clemson.
And USC, Tulane. I know I don't have to ask you about Bama.
Yeah, so. I was going to say, please don't even ask me that. Can you repeat the game? I'm sorry.
USC, Tulane.
USC Tulane. I'm going to go with the Green Wave here.
Attaboy. Good friend Jody Moncrief, Rocky Mountain Sports Network, Denver Bronco Roundup, Tuesday nights. Check him out. Him and Keith do an excellent job with Dutchie. Evening, gentlemen. What's up, Jody? Thanks for joining
Evening,
us tonight.
guys.
All right, fellas. We did this last year. Ryan, you're new to the show this year, so we did a year in review show last year. I thought it was a success.
Kenny,
Jody's
Kenny,
sending out
can I just have
shout
5
out to
seconds,
you,
please?
Carson. Yeah.
Please. Just a breaking news alert. Lucas Litke traded to the Atlanta Braves.
They can have him.
Who was that?
Lucas Lucky. Yankee pitcher, left-handed. They can have him.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Jody. Go Lions.
All right, boys. So our year in review, we're going to go through a lot of these stories rapid fire style, minute, 2 minutes. The world of sports, good and bad, happy, sad. I figure let's start off with the biggest game of the year, and that was 2022 Super Bowl. And Carson, you're going to say a few words about the Super Bowl, your boy Stafford, and I'm sure you're going to have him in there.
Yeah, it was definitely a great game to watch for the ages. It came down to the wire. Aaron Donald made a play in the last play of the game to secure the victory for the Rams. And talk about a crazy story. Stafford, he had, mediocrity in Detroit, never really couldn't get a team going around him. And, he gave us everything he had. And then what do you know? We trade him in a blockbuster trade for Goff for Stafford swap and couple first round picks, and I think it was a win-win trade. The Rams next year, the trade went through. They went to the Super Bowl. They won, and it was a great game on both sides of the ball. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals, they gave a lot of teams hope. That was a team that struggled throughout the year, and then they got in as the last wild card spot. And Joe Burrow was unbelievable. His first true official season, because his first year he got hurt half the year, but this is his full healthy season. Took that team all the way to the Super Bowl. Took down absolute juggernauts in the AFC with Mahomes as well. And it was a great game all around. And I think also you got to give credit to the halftime show as well. Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Eminem, Mary J. Blige, Kendrick Lamar. I think that was definitely a top 10 Super Bowl halftime show as well. But I'm happy for Stafford. I'm glad he got his ring, and it was definitely a great game.
Thanks, Carson. One of our most recent stories, tragic. A couple days before the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception, Franco Harris unexpectedly passes away just days before his number was even going to be retired in Pittsburgh. And Paul, we talked about him on Wednesday's show, but if you can, in the review show, please say a few words about Franco Harris. Paul, you there?
Yeah, sorry about that. I lost you for a second. Yeah.
Okay.
So Franco Harris, one of the all-time greats. As a rookie, he basically led the Steelers into their first playoff game, and they won with, of course, everyone knows at this point, the greatest catch is voted, greatest play is voted in by the NFL in the 100 years of the NFL, the Immaculate Reception. He was the piece that the Steelers based their foundation on. They had Joe Green, they had Terry Bradshaw. They made the playoffs that year. The following year, they then were able to draft the Lynn Swans, the John Stallworths, the Jack Lamberts, and they just built on. And he was the cornerstone of that unbelievable dynasty in the 70s, winning Super Bowls in 75, 76, and then 78 and 79. So Franco was just a tremendous person. No one ever said a bad word about him. That's how respected he was. And it was just so tragic that he lost his life a couple of days before the Steelers were going to have the honor of retiring his number, which was only the third number retired in the long history of the Steeler franchise.
Thanks, Paul. Uh, Ryan, some big name quarterbacks changed location to start the 2022 season, and we listed three of them. And if you want to talk about Russell Wilson first, and I know Dave's out there listening, Jody, they're big Bronco fans.
Yeah,
So start with Russell Wilson changing locations.
I hope I don't say anything that gets me kicked off the show by Kurt, but so no, I think everybody looked at this and saw, Dallas, or excuse me, Denver, having pretty much everything but a quarterback.
That was a
and
Freudian slip.
yeah, I don't know what that was. But looked at Denver as that and kind of thought that, oh, you put, one of the great quarterbacks of this era into that roster, how could that not be? And I was one of them who fell victim to this. And it's just been a complete disaster. You had to have, we all know how, things have gone with them having to remove some coaching responsibility from Nate Hackett, bringing in guys to kind of defer some of that responsibility. Russell Wilson has had a horribly disappointing season by his own standards. Well, actually, just by NFL standards. So there's a lot of speculation as to what's going to happen this offseason. Will George Payton be retained? It seems like he will. What direction will they look in, obviously, for head coach? And how much influence will Russell Wilson continue to have in the organization? Obviously, it's going to be some because of the money that they've committed to him and with what they gave up to get him. But definitely not how they wanted that era to get started in Mile High. Moving on, obviously, by far the most controversial one of the situations that happened this offseason, we saw Deshaun Watson moved from Houston, which seemed inevitable for a while. What did not seem inevitable is that he ultimately went to the Cleveland Browns. He was obviously guaranteed the first fully guaranteed 9-figure contract in NFL history. That obviously rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, given the allegations of what Deshaun Watson was purported to have engaged in the illicit conduct, and with all those things still ongoing. It seemed inevitable he was going to be moved, but I think that a lot of the compensation that he received as a consequence of that trade rubbed people the wrong way, understandably so. That situation obviously has come back to bite Cleveland, as everything does that is associated with Cleveland. They actually were having a pretty not bad season under Jacoby Brissett as quarterback, and then Deshaun Watson has just looked atrocious on the field since he's come back. There's been some questions about Kevin Stefanski's future in Cleveland, which I personally don't 100% understand. He was coach of the year just 2 years ago. But again, I think this is a risk that you run. I think one of the biggest things that stood out to me was the clip. I think it was Mortensen. I could be wrong, but there was a report that came out the week that the trade was made, and it said that Cleveland was looking for quote unquote an adult in the room when they were moving off of Baker Mayfield. And the fact that their decision was to go for Deshaun Watson is just the most Cleveland Browns thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Finally, moving over to Matt Ryan, the third out of the three examples of players that have just not worked out in their new environments. He obviously has been benched for Sam Ellinger. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Ellinger, perhaps. And of course, it's not the sign of a particularly well-functional organization when you're bringing in somebody who was who was on ESPN a week ago to be your new head coach in Jeff Saturday. I respect Jeff Saturday. He was the center from one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time, Peyton Manning, but I thought that was a very, very questionable decision. It felt to me like a typical sort of knee-jerk Jim Irsay type of move that hasn't paid off to this point. I don't expect him, obviously, to be retained after the season. The one brief fun anecdote that I'll bring up about that was that back 9 months ago, I actually had brain surgery, and I came out of the surgery, and apparently I don't remember this, but apparently the first thing I yelled was, "What did they get for Matt Ryan?" So that was that's the one sort of positive that I can say there. But no, none of these moves have worked out well for the teams that have engaged with in them. And, obviously these teams are all looking for a rebound next season. But I think in particular, the Cleveland one in particular and the Denver one, obviously with the financial components that have been committed there and the draft picks that were committed to those moves, those teams are going to be really under the gun this offseason to have a strong 180 from where they were this year.
Thanks, Ryan. I got one more quick story, and then I'll read the Hall of Fame inductees past year. Quick story I'll read. Tom Brady shocks the world when he announces he's unretiring from the NFL. In March, he did this, and he will play for the Buccaneers. Once again, we all know what's going on with the Bucs this year. They're struggling to win, in my opinion, the worst top two bottom divisions in football. Seismic size struggle over there. Just days away from free agency, fellas. He announced he was coming back, and he sent shockwaves throughout the sports world. Some say, it was, distraction to get away what's going on in his personal life. Some say he just misses football. So only Tom knows the real reason why he's back in the NFL after, retiring and then coming right back, but only Tom knows. But Tom Brady unretires from the NFL, and we'll see how long he goes on for. Our NFL Hall of Fame inductees were Tony Baselli, Jaguars. Jaguars, I think it was Paul's first Jaguars pick, right?
Yes.
He was the first Jaguars pick. Jimmy Butler, late great Sam Mills, went to local New Jersey college, Montclair State, where I grew up. Richard Seymour, Bryant Young, the Raiders' Cliff Branch, Art McNally, and head coach Dick Vermeil. Well deserved. Welcome to the Hall of Fame. Move on to our next sport. Let's move on to Major League Baseball. I'll start off with the World Series, fellas. And the World Series 118th version of the edition of the World Series featured the AL champs Houston Astros and the NL champs Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies took a surprising. The Phillies were a wild card team that surprisingly made it to the World Series, played the underdog role against the mighty Astros, and took a quick 2-1 lead versus the Astros. And Cinderella's Cinderella's ball was getting ready to party, but the Astros right after that took the final 3 games to win the series, and it was very notable because they had the first World Series no-hitter. Yes, it was a combined no-hitter, but it was the first no-hitter since Don Larson's perfect game in 1956. Rookie Jeremy Pena was named the MVP, and he was the 3rd rookie to win that prestigious award. Next, we're going to move on to who's up next. Where is it? Aaron Judge. And Ryan, AL record was broken. Why don't you talk about Aaron Judge for us?
Yeah, so obviously we entered the season back in the spring. There's the contract dispute between Aaron Judge and the Yankees. There's that the leaking of the offer that obviously was controversial by the Yankees, disclosing publicly the fact that he was offered a $213 million contract, at which point the fans and the media were obviously taking sides pretty staunchly as to he definitely should have taken that, or there's no way he would have taken that, or whatever the case may be. And I think a lot of people, including myself, were skeptical that him rejecting that offer was the right decision. And he had proved everybody wrong in the most extreme way possible, obviously, by setting the new AL record for home runs at 62. It was funny. There was some dialogue during the season. Well, can it really be counted as the same record if he's playing 162 games as opposed to 154 or whatever the case? If you actually look at the season, he only had 1 home run in his first 18 games, so he actually did get hit 61 home runs in 144 games. So he had obviously a season for the ages and made himself $146 million in doing so. And the Yankees ultimately did what I think most people thought that they should do. They brought him back. He's been named captain, and he's going to make $360 million. And he's been a Yankee since I was 15, and he'll be one until I'm 31. So It feels good to know that by the time I'm 31, I'll spend more than half my life watching Aaron Judge in pinstripes.
Absolutely. Guys, I got somebody who wants to come in and say hello to everybody. Mr. Valenti
Mr.
on
Valenti.
location.
Hey, there he is.
Are you in
What's
Denver?
going on,
Holly
guys?
Jolly.
Is that Denver?
Yeah, holly jolly, Mr. Hackett. But I just want to tell you guys, miss doing the show with you guys tonight. You guys are the best, and of course, Happy New Year to everybody. But
Same
I will
to
be
you.
back tomorrow for Wits and Wages.
Sweet.
Quick
Amazing.
flight
Sounds
back from
good.
Denver, huh?
Quickly, well, I did my interview today, and everything went well. So hopefully, I get this job.
Awesome.
Good for you, man.
Awesome.
So I will be back tomorrow, but just want to wish you guys happy New Year. And I can't bust on the Giants. Giants played well. Eagles, I don't know, man. Minshew might be better than Jalen Hurts. Carson, your Lions, I'm still a believer.
Thanks.
But
Kurt, what exactly was in your glass at dinner tonight?
no, I'm just busting your. We will see, but I'm going to go get this to Jen. I think I asked Jen the other. What's your Super Bowl prediction? And she won. I'm still going Niners on Buffalo. I just think.
It's fine.
Kurt's getting a little choppy over there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that wasn't me.
That's that thin air in Denver.
It's Atlantic City. It's because I'm on my.
I know you are.
All right, guys. I just wanted to wish Happy New Year. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You too.
All right,
See you.
Kurt.
See you later.
Enjoy,
Take care.
enjoy the trip.
Take care.
See you
Enjoy.
tomorrow.
Say hi to Hoops.
The one and only Mr. Kurt Valenti in for a quick little hello to you guys. Quick comments that were sent out. Jody, big Astros fan, guys. Dynasty boys. Jody's also saying, good thing for Kurt, Peyton hires inexperienced guys. That's good.
That's worked out
great.
well.
That's great.
Our next story in the world of Major League Baseball, I'm going to pass off to Carson. It has to do with one player retiring this past year, and he most likely will be a first ballot Hall of Famer, will be first ballot, and another one which has to do with his Detroit Tigers, and that's Miguel Cabrera and also Albert Pujols. So if you'd like to say a few words about those two players, Carson, we'd like to listen.
Yeah, I'll go with Pujols first. Obviously, just a pure dominant first baseman. I'll give you kind of his stats. He had a 296 career batting average, had over 3,300 hits, 703 home runs, 2,200 RBIs. He won 2 Gold Glove awards, 3 MVPs, Rookie of the Year, 6 Silver Slug awards. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. 2 World Series. I mean, the guy was all class. He played for 3 teams with the Cardinals, the Angels, and the Dodgers. One of my favorite players growing up. Next to Cabrera, I wish him nothing but the best. Like Kenny just said, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm glad he ended his career with the team he started out with the St. Louis Cardinals. And when my Tigers were going up against them in the 06 World Series, he completely just destroyed the Tigers in that World Series. So props to Pujols. He's an absolute legend, and nothing but the best for Pujols. But yeah, now I'm going to get to my guy, Miguel Cabrera. This guy, I remember when he was traded from the Marlins to the Tigers, and he was the talk of the town. He came in right away, just made an immediate impact. List goes on and on about Cabrera. He's a World Series champion with the Marlins. Like I said, he won the Triple Crown in 2012, one of the greatest seasons I've ever seen in my life from a baseball player, one of the best first basemen in Detroit Tigers history. He's a 3-time Silver Slugger, 7 Silver Sluggers. He's won the MVP a couple times, one of the greatest hitters of all time, just hit 3,000 hits back in April. The list goes on and on and on. And definitely, Miguel Cabrera will go down as one of the best right-handed hitters, if not the greatest right-handed hitter of all time. I mean, the guy was just pure dominance. The pitchers did not want to face him. I'll never forget that infamous matchup between Mariano Rivera and Miguel Cabrera, and Cabrera put it over the center field wall. That was pretty insane. But unfortunately, he couldn't get a World Series with us. He got to 2 World Series with the Tigers. Unfortunately, they just kind of came up short. with him. But yeah, he'll go down. He'll have his curtain call down at Comerica Park, and next year will be officially his last year. He just announced a couple months ago, but he does want to stay around the organization, whether that may be in baseball itself or with the Tigers front office or whatever it is, like a hitting coach or whatever he wants to do. But yeah, definitely Miggy and Pujols. I mean, you could put them right there. I mean, one of the best National League hitters of all time in Pujols, and one of the best American League hitters of all time in Cabrera.
And Carson, it's funny it's not funny, but when I think of Miguel Cabrera, I forget the pitcher's name off the top of my head. The perfect game where Jim Joyce blew the call and Cabrera's going like this.
Armando Galarraga.
Yes, Galarraga. I just seeing his face, but
yeah.
Quick question, Carson. Quick answer. Do the Tigers, assuming they're not going to contend for a World Series, at the trade deadline, do they owe it to Miguel Cabrera to maybe trade him to a contender that he can DH for a playoff push and maybe get to a World Series and then retire as a Tiger in the offseason?
Wow. I mean, obviously he could definitely he has the capability to do so. I from the talk of it, from his interviews and what he's been saying, he wants to finish as a Detroit Tiger in the month of September, hopefully in October if the Tigers somehow do end up making the playoffs. I don't see that happening, though. We have a long way to go, but that would be pretty crazy news if that were to happen. But he's 39 years old. I think he's past his prime. I think he's just kind of settled down, and definitely when his last at bat comes, hopefully at Comerica Park, I think he'll have his curtain call and end it as a Tiger.
Yeah, so I was looking at it as a business perspective of it.
Yeah,
and if they're out of contention, you can get something for Cabrera, and if he'd be willing to go to a contender, maybe get a chance. Ryan just gave us some news. Gene Segura to Miami, 2 years, $17 million. Thanks, Ryan. Okay, so next story we have New York team, $800 million off season. Sounds like George Steinbrenner's back in town. The ghost of George Steinbrenner has arrived, but I think the ghost got confused. He's over there in Flushing, Queens.
He went to the wrong side.
And he's over there in Flushing, Queens with Paul's New York Mets. So why don't you talk about this $800 million off season for the New York Mets, Paul?
Well, Met fans have rejoiced. We finally have someone who's looking to spend money, and we went from a 101 win season, which was one of the greatest seasons, regular seasons at least, in Mets history, to an off season where we were losing a lot of free agents. There were record number in the bullpen and their starting pitching staff. And after DeGrom chose to move along to go to Texas, we wished him well, but we needed to start signing reinforcements. And Uncle Stevie didn't disappoint Met fans. Between Justin Verlander, bringing back Brandon Nimmo, re-signing Edwin Diaz, Jose Quintana, Adam Ottavino, David Robertson, bringing in the Japanese pitcher Kodai Senga, and on the night that everyone was sleeping and we all woke up, except for Ryan, who was up at 2:41 in the morning, we got the biggest prize by giving us Carlos Correa. Now, of course, he hasn't signed yet officially. It hasn't been announced. There's still some medical issues. But the fact of the matter remains, Steve Cohen is a true Mets fan. He said it. He's been a lifelong fan. After years and years suffering with the Wilpons, they always bargained. They always shopped in the bargain aisle, as I think it was Scott Boris's quote. Finally, we can play with the big boys. We have New York across our chest, not Timbuktu. And he's putting his money where his mouth is. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of criticism from rival executives, from fans, but you know what? As a Mets fan, I love it. I appreciate it. I've seen Yankee fans in the media love it, and you know what? To this guy, $800 million is a drop in the bucket. And I know there are teams and there are organizations who can't stand it. Now, of course, it remains to be seen if this will all translate into a winning team and a World Series champion. But you know what? From this point forward, he's made himself in a situation where he's going to spend the money. He's going to provide New York and Mets fans with the best team possible, and it's a drop in the bucket for him. And
Guys,
as a Mets fan, I truly appreciate it, and I love it.
guys, I got a great question from Jody, and I'm going to ask the four of us. I'm going to put it on the screen, but I'm going to ask this great question because of Carson being a Tiger fan and Paul a Met fan. His question. I'm going to ask Ryan first. The Yankee fans are going to get. Oh, wrong one. I'm going to ask Ryan first, and Yankee fans are going to answer first, and then I'm going to go Carson and Paul. Is Verlander an upgrade from DeGrom?
So you start with
Ryan first. Yeah.
You said?
Yeah, I'll start with you, Ryan. We'll get ours out of the way. Since
Sorry, there's a bit of a.
We're least. It's okay. We're least invested in this,
right,
so
sorry.
we'll answer first.
Yeah, my connection's a little bit bad. No, so if you're asking me talent-wise, I think DeGrom is the more talented pitcher than Verlander. However, for some crazy reason, at the age of 44 or whatever he is, Justin Verlander manages to be a more reliable and more durable pitcher, which defies everything I know about pitching. So I think if you're looking at just this season, I would trust Verlander to give me 180 innings more than I would trust DeGrom. Now, you can say that, DeGrom in 120 innings can pitch better than Verlander can, then I would probably agree that his ceiling is higher. But if you're actually trying to get through, a situation where you're trying to get someone who can pitch you from April to and hopefully through October, I'm taking Verlander.
It's tough. It's a coin flip for me, going both ways. I'll go DeGrom because of the age. I know they're both, they've both been hurt. So if I'm gonna go, talent-wise, they're you could take either one. I'd take either one in a Game 7 of a World Series tomorrow. So that being said, I'm gonna go the slightly younger guy. So I'm gonna say no. It's not an upgrade over DeGrom. Let's go Carson because he had Verlander on his team, ironically, with Scherzer, and then we'll get Paul to finish.
Yeah, I agree with what you guys are both saying. I think Verlander, obviously, he's got the age difference on him with him being 39 years old versus DeGrom, who's 34. So DeGrom could go a little bit lengthier of a career than Verlander's at currently right now. Again, it's hard to say it's not an upgrade. I mean, Verlander just won the Cy Young Award, and he just came off a World Series championship ring. So I think you have to give the nod to Verlander if you want to talk about experience and physical talent over the years of pound per pound pitcher. I would go Verlander the slight nod, but I think the longer upside is DeGrom. But right now, I think it's Verlander. Yes.
Paul.
It's a very good question. DeGrom, even though he's 34 and he's about 5 years younger right now than Verlander, has always in the back of your mind that is he going to be healthy? It's always there. That next pitch, that next game, can he go out? Verlander is going to be 40 years old on opening day, but here's the difference. He missed almost 2 years with the Tommy John surgery. So even though chronologically he's 40 years old, but he's still a little younger based on the fact that he didn't throw for almost 2 years after the surgery, and he came back last year and proved that he didn't miss a beat. So I think it's a slight upgrade. I mean, this guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Not to take anything away from Jacob DeGrom, who, I've seen Seaver, I've seen Gooden. DeGrom is right up there with the greatest pitchers of all time. But when you talk about guys who are going to go there, go out every single game, and he's going to do it for you, for Verlander, to me is that kind of bulldog, and I want that guy. So I'm so glad that we signed him.
Guys, I want to get to one more because I was going to ask this, Jody, as well, about the Mets if Paul didn't bring it up. I do want to talk about one thing, and then let's get back into the review because I do want to, definitely want to recognize our audience. So don't leave out the deal for Carlos Correa. Okay, I saw that deal, Paul, after the Giants gave him 13 years, and then they backed off it with the physical. And then a couple days later, the Mets are jumping in with a 12-year deal. I sat here with Sis, and we both said, what are they doing? And the Mets fans were ecstatic about this deal. Ecstatic. And I said, this guy might still be hurt. And now there's these back issues. And you're giving this guy 12 years?
Well, actually,
it's not his opinion. It's crazy.
It's not his back. It's not his back. He injured himself when he was younger. His right leg. He broke his tibia in his right
I'm sorry,
leg.
I'm thinking of somebody else. I don't know why I said that.
And yeah, they saw the same type of issues that the Giants have seen. And what they're trying to do, and I saw it one on MLB Network and another source, just actually before we came on today, that they're still trying to work out language that both sides, the Mets and Scott Boras and Correa's camp, will be satisfied if, in fact, there is some issues. I think both of these reports said that they will probably get it done. That's why no news is good news. Nothing has really come out since they initially announced it and went through the physicals. But they're trying to work out something that's going to protect both the Mets' interest, which is understandable, but also allow Correa to have some type of incentives to want to come to New York. I think he wants to come to New York. I think, let's face it, after both the Giants and the Mets, how many other teams seeing all this are going to really offer him a lot of big bucks like these two teams did? So I think they're going to try and get it done. Is there a concern? Yeah. I mean, listen, so many players sign big contracts and they can get injured in any way, shape, or form. So I think they're trying to structure a language or some type of maybe buyout or something that's going to protect both the player and the organization. And I think ultimately, probably maybe after the first, they'll get something done.
I know we could get into this for hours, guys. And just my last thing on it is Mike Trout. He's hurt every year, and how old is Correa? 29?
20. I think he's 28. I read
28. You're giving him a 12-year deal. He's going to be playing until he's 40. He's hurt now at 28. Can't pass a physical. What's going to happen when 5 years from now? You guys will be begging for him to go. I've seen it with the Yankees. Ryan, I know you've seen it with the Yankees. A-Rod and Stanton right now, we've seen it with the Yankees. And I
would say
hope I'm wrong for you guys. I think
Stanton.
it's Ellsbury, another good one. I think it's a mistake, and I hope I'm wrong for the Mets fans. I think it's a mistake. And worst deal in 5 years, Judge or Carlos Correa? Real quick, rapid fire, Carson.
Wow. I'm going to go Judge.
You're going to go Judge? I'm going to go Correa. I'm going to go Correa because of his health issues. He can't pass a physical. Paul.
I'll say Correa, but I think ultimately if he plays, he's going to produce.
And Ryan.
Correa. Judge is coming off back-to-back healthy seasons, and Correa can't get a team to pass him through a freaking physical.
Fair enough. All right, boys, let's get back to our year in review. Uh, that's going to conclude Major League Baseball. I'm going to announce the Hall of Fame. One lone Hall of Famer. Uh, I don't even want to say his name. Yankee killer David Big Papi Ortiz. All joking aside, welcome to the Hall of Fame. That guy was a Yankee killer for us, Ryan, throughout the years, man.
He was, and also I don't know if you guys saw this real quick. Bigger than baseball, the people who were charged with attempted murder of David Ortiz. There's been legal developments surrounding them today, so hope that he gets justice for that.
Absolutely. Good point. NBA time, boys. I got Paul going to give us a little rundown on the NBA Finals, which featured the Celtics and the Warriors.
The Warriors reclaimed themselves last year as the best team in the NBA. They beat the Boston Celtics in 6 games. They played an excellent final. Stephen Curry again proved maybe he was the best player in the NBA by winning the MVP for the first time. And while I believe now they've won 4 championships in the last 8 years, you can probably call them a dynasty. And I think they've proved that keeping a team together for the most part certainly works, especially in the NBA.
Thanks, Paul. Our next, I only got 2 stories for the NBA, so we can move on a little bit. The next one features a new hit TV show called It's Never Sunny in Brooklyn, with its stars Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. And Ryan would love to talk about his new hit show, so we'll let Ryan talk about it.
Yeah, no, I think I've been pretty clear on the fact that I haven't watched a Brooklyn Nets game in over 2 months. You had the saga of Kyrie, will he play or won't he play due to the vaccine stuff, and then whatever else, he was dealing with. It was like 3 different reasons as to why he wouldn't play. Then you had the James Harden, forcing his way to Brooklyn, then forcing his way out of Brooklyn 3 months later. Now he's trying to force his way back to Houston, and that's a whole other argument about player empowerment that we can have on another show. And then that trade ultimately brought Brooklyn back. That's hard to say. Ben Simmons, he did not play for the rest of the year. And then this summer, cap it all off with a Kevin Durant trade request, which obviously never went materialized. And then this season, as if that all wasn't enough, we had a team. We had Kyrie back in the headlines again for something other than basketball, with his post about a film that I know Paul has spoken at length about, so I'm not going to dig up that dead horse. And then to add insult to about 55 different injuries, all of a sudden we had an attempt after Steve Nash was let go, which I can't think of anybody who probably was more grateful to lose their job in the last year than Steve Nash. All of a sudden we had the Nets trying to hire for about a week Ime Udoka, who was actively suspended by one of their biggest rivals for sexual harassment or misconduct, whatever the word you want to use is, alleged that he had an improper relationship with a subordinate. And Brooklyn decided that was the great time to try and hire him to be their new head coach while he was suspended by Boston. So if you need any other evidence that I am so fed up and done with following that team, I just gave it to you in 2 minutes.
Good friend from Rocky Mountain Sports Network, Denver Bronco Roundup, Jody's another co-host over that show on Tuesday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern. Good evening, gents. Kyrie is one of the best that could have been. That is true.
I agree with that.
That is true. Our Hall of Fame inductees, we had 2 of them. And they were good ones. Manu Ginobili and Tim Hardaway. Welcome to the Basketball Hall of Fame.
2 great ones.
College football time. I'll come right back to Ryan. We'll let him talk.
Can I just interrupt for a second? I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One other player that is well known in New York that was elected actually to the broadcasting wing of the Hall of Fame, a guy by the name of Walt Clyde Frazier.
Clyde the Walt. Oh, nice. I didn't know that. Thanks,
Me
Paul.
neither.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
College football championship, Ryan, featured your Alabama Crimson Tide and your arch nemesis Georgia Bulldogs. Got a little recap of that one early in the season in January. Probably the first major event of the year.
Yeah, it definitely was. And again, you can't, as much as I love Alabama, as much as I love Bryce Young, obviously he did not have a great game. Obviously, kind of hard to have a great game when you have to throw the ball 57 times. But Georgia with Stetson Bennett, give them credit. He was able to play a clean game with 26 attempts, 2 TDs, no picks. And they kept their rushing game going with both James Cook and Zamir White. And they just the game was pretty low scoring. For most of the game, they went into the fourth quarter with it being a 13-9 lead for Georgia, and then Georgia just completely took it to Alabama in the fourth quarter. They were not super efficient on third down or anything that is particularly conducive to success in situations like that, but it didn't really matter. They scored when it counted, and they held Alabama off the board when it counted. Made a couple of big plays to pick off Bryce Young twice, and those scores late in the game ended up making the difference in a 33-18 victory for the Bulldogs over the Crimson Tide. And it looks like the Bulldogs are set to have a strong path toward a repeat this year. Against whoever they end up facing in the big game.
Unfortunately, guys, we had a big tragic story in college football, and that was on the night of November 13th, 2022. A mass shooting took place at the University of Virginia. For those who don't know, Jenny Hoops, Jen Valenti, that's her alma mater. Tragic event in which 3 people were killed, 2 others injured. 4 members, including the 3 who died, were members of the Virginia Cavaliers football team. Deshaun Perry, Lavelle Davis, and Devin Chandler made a rest in peace, and hopefully they're playing up in the sky there and getting a championship up there in the sky. That being said, let's move on to Paul for our Heisman Trophy award winner.
Okay. So with the Bryce Youngs and C.J. Stroud's big favorites to win the Heisman Trophy this year, a portal transfer from Oklahoma followed his coach, Lincoln Riley, out to USC, and Caleb Williams easily won the Heisman Trophy this year. He had a fantastic year, led the USC to the championship of the Pac-12. They unfortunately lost in the title game, but overall, he had a fantastic year. Interestingly enough, Lincoln Riley has been the coach for 3 of the last 6 Heisman Trophy winners. Of course, Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, and now Caleb Williams. Ironically, the other 3 finalists, Max Duggan, C.J. Stroud, and Stetson Bennett, quarterbacks who finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the voting, are playing in the college football playoffs for the championship. And I just wonder if Caleb Williams would trade the Heisman for an opportunity to play in the championship instead.
Thanks, Paul. We had some disappointing seasons this college football season, and one more. I don't think they could. I don't think I can beat. I might be able to beat this one, but Carson's Michigan State Spartans up there in Michigan, watching them Wolverines in the playoffs. Talk about your disappointing season, Carson. You don't have to go that long. You can do it in 5 seconds if you want, but we'll give you the floor for your Michigan State Spartans.
Yeah, no, it was an embarrassment. This team had high expectations, and it was a talk of the town of who was going to fill Kenneth Walker III's shoes. He obviously won the Doak Walker Award last year, best running back in college football, and they were ranked in the top 25, and they had a nice 3-game winning streak to start the year. And they went into Washington. They lost against the Huskies, and ever since they just went on a downward spiral. And talk about embarrassment, because you just gave your coach a 10-year, $95 million extension, and what does he do the year after he gets paid? He can't make a freaking bowl game. So next year's got to be the year. If Michigan State doesn't win minimum a bowl game next year, at least 7 to 8 wins, you got to seriously question Mel Tucker and that coaching staff. I think there's going to be some serious changes on both sides of the ball with coordinators, and it was kind of embarrassing to say so the least.
And Paul, we got to do it right in the let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Right.
Mel Tucker's gotta go.
Carson knows. Carson knows.
There it is. Our next disappointing team, I'll bring up my team, the Miami Hurricanes. Off season, we hired former Oregon head coach Mario Cristobal. Go back to his alma mater to be our head coach. Our preseason rank was 14. Tyler Van Dyke, Heisman Trophy candidate. Hopeful, I should say. We're primed for a successful season, right? Nope. Early losses to Texas A&M, who's the next disappointment on this list, and Middle Tennessee State turned what supposed to be a promising season into college football's version of the Denver Broncos. Our final record was 5-7. And hopefully we can turn this around next year, because like Carson said, with Mel Tucker, Mario Cristobal's got to go. And if you all noticed, Ed Reed just got a head coaching job today at Bethune-Cookman.
Nice.
And I'm thinking about prime time. He started at Jackson State a couple of years and went over to Colorado now. Ed Reed played at Miami. Get your coaching experience and, see what happens over there at Bethune-Cookman. But Cristobal's got 3 years. So year one's done. He's got 2 more years to turn this around. Because I'll give him a pass this year because it wasn't his team. You're a recruiter. Go get the guys and turn this team around. Let's go. Ryan, I'm going to give you a combo. You're going to get A&M and Alabama and talk about both of those 2 teams' disappointing seasons.
All right. I'll start with the Crimson Tide.
Alabama's 2 losses is really a disappointing season, but we're going to put it in there because they're disappointing that they didn't make it to the playoffs.
Yeah. So, looking at the I'm going to focus in on obviously on the 2 losses that they had, because 7 wins is a day at the beach for Alabama. Obviously they had the loss against the LSU, which obviously. For anybody who didn't see it, it was a game that was tied, went into overtime. Alabama scored a touchdown, got the PAT. LSU answered with a touchdown and ended up converting the 2 points to win by 1. This was a very well competed game by both sides. Jaden Daniels, for the fact that Alabama was able to sack him 6 times, was able to really keep his composure. So credit to him on that. And, it really came down, obviously, to that one decision where Bama went for the PAT, as I think most teams would, scoring first in overtime. And then LSU just happened to, be able to secure the 2 point. That's what happens. I think by far the more disappointing loss was against the Vols, losing by 3, even though I actually said going into that week that I was going to, that I thought that they were on upset alert. Alabama had no business losing this game. They had the time of possession by over 15 minutes advantage over Tennessee. But 17 penalties for 130 yards. You're not really in games that way, especially in the SEC. So that obviously significantly hurt them and didn't help the fact that this was another example of Bryce Young being forced to throw 52 times. And it was not helpful that he was not able to have that clean game behind him. They pretty much were even keel in first downs, 32-29. Only had 1 turnover difference, and actually only had 2 yards total difference between the 2 teams. But in a game where Hooker and Hyatt linked up for 5 touchdowns, it's kind of hard to win when you're getting penalized 17 times. So in my opinion, the game that really cost Alabama their position was this game against the Vols, more so than the game against LSU.
Guys, we've got about roughly 10 to 12 minutes left. So I'm going to read a couple of these stories real quick, and then we'll do men's basketball, and then we've got a couple more short little things for you guys. NHL, it's not all sad out there in Rocky Mountain Network land. Colorado Avalanche won their first Stanley Cup since 2001, beating the reigning champs Tampa Bay Lightning in 6 games. Congratulations to the Colorado Avalanche. Unfortunately, I don't know too much about hockey, so I can't really speak too much, but I do know they had some heck of a run there watching some of that Stanley Cup finals there. So congratulations out there in Colorado and Rocky Mountain land. Alex Ovechkin became the number 2 scorer all time in NHL history. And at the time I wrote this, he had 802 goals. I don't know if he has any more since, but he is number 2 next to the great Wayne Gretzky. World Cup, most recent major event, featured Argentina and France, and the great Lionel Messi got his World Cup championship, and his fellow Argentina team defeated France on penalty kicks in Qatar to win the World Cup.
Unbelievable game.
Yes, it was definitely incredible, and a lot of fun to watch the World Cup, I must say. We'll do men's basketball real quick, and then, like I said, then we'll do a couple more things to end the show. Men's basketball, Carson, Final Four, and the championship game was Kansas, North Carolina. You want to give us a little rundown on that?
Sure, yeah. The Final Four was great. You had Villanova versus Kansas in one side of the bracket, and then North Carolina took on Duke, one of the most historic rivalries in all of college basketball, meeting up in the Final Four. It was 2 seeds. Villanova was 2. Duke was a 2 seed. Kansas was 1, and North Carolina creeped in as an 8 seed. So they kind of made their Cinderella story all the way to the national championship. Obviously, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, was his last run at Duke. He got all the way to the Final Four. I think that's a pretty good way to go out. One of the greatest college basketball coaches of all time. Wish him nothing but the best and enjoy retirement, Coach K. And congrats to Bill Self. They came back from 13 points in the national title game. I was watching that game back and forth, and it came down to the last shot. Bill Self got his first title with Kansas. So it was a great Final Four. And, we'll see what 2023 brings in store as well.
That should be fun for sure. Paul, 2 legendary coaches retired. And if you want to just give us a quick rundown on who those guys were in case somebody's been in a EcoPod for the last 10 years.
Yeah, as Carson alluded to, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, retired after the Final Four loss to North Carolina. What can you say? Arguably the greatest college basketball coach of all time. Was at Duke for 42 years. Just to read off, 5 national titles, 13 Final Fours, 15 ACC tournament championships. He was also a coach of the U.S. men's Olympic team for 10 years, winningest coach in college basketball with 1,196 wins. So, again, you can argue him, Wooden, but one considered a legend and one of the great coaches of all time. And Jay Wright, in his own right, no pun intended, great coach at Villanova, 21 years, 2 national basketball championships, coach of the year twice, 6-time Big East coach of the year, did it all for Villanova. He had an incredible career as coach of the Wildcats, and well-deserved retirement for Jay Wright.
A couple more stories I forgot to get to. I'll just read them real quick. In college basketball, South Carolina beat UConn in the final, handing Gino Auriemma his first loss in 12 national title games. In the world of golf, Saudi-backed LIV had many major players abandon the PGA and European tours to cash in to cash in. On the PGA Tour, all majors were won by golfers 30 years and under for the first time. Those golfers were Scotty Scheffler for the Masters, Justin Thomas, PGA Championship, Matthew Fitzpatrick, U.S. Open, Cameron Smith, British Open. Unfortunately, I'm going to pass this off to Paul this year. I did it last year. World of Sports lost a lot of people this year, and Paul's going to recognize some of those people we lost.
Okay, in memoriam, and these are the sport figures who passed away in 2022. I'll do it by sport. In football, Dan Reeves, great player, great coach, among other teams, the Giants, Atlanta, and the Broncos. Ray Guy, Hall of Famer, the only punter in the Hall of Fame in the NFL. Don Maynard, Hall of Fame receiver with the Jets, was on the Super Bowl team with Joe Namath. Dwayne Haskins, too young. Franco Harris, who we just spoke about. Mike Leach, great coach, Texas Tech, Washington State, Mississippi State. Len Dawson, Hall of Fame quarterback with the Kansas City Chiefs from the old AFL. Tony Siragusa, member of the 2000 Baltimore Ravens team, one of the great teams of all time, beat my Giants in the Super Bowl. And of course, he went on to become a sportcaster, and many people knew him from there, but also a great player with the Ravens. And Charlie Taylor, who was a fantastic receiver when I was growing up, watching the Washington Redskins play my Giants. He was a great receiver and a Hall of Famer. In baseball, Gerald Williams, Yankee, Atlanta Brave. Jeremy Giambi, Oakland A, of course, the brother of Jason Giambi. A great shortstop for the Dodgers, Los Angeles Dodgers, Murray Wills. Arguably the GOAT of broadcasters, Vince Scully, passed away this year. And two other Hall of Famers, Gaylord Perry, who was the renowned spitball or substance pitcher, and another Hall of Famer, Bruce Sutter, who had the split finger. And in basketball, Bill Russell, one of the great all-time Boston and NBA players. Paul Silas, another great three-time champion with the Boston Celtics, and was also a longtime coach in the NBA. Bob Lanier, underrated because he played with some of the great centers in that era, but a great center for your Pistons for a number of years. Carson.
Yeah.
In hockey. And Pete Carroll, who was a famous coach at Princeton. They would make the NCAA tournament, and nobody wanted to play them because there was always the fear of losing to Princeton as usually a 16th seed. In hockey, two of the greatest Islanders of all time, part of their dynasty of 4 Stanley Cups in a row, Clark Gillies and Mike Bossy. I watched them numerous times when I was up in New York. Fantastic players. One of the all-time Ranger greats in the organization of Coach Emile the Cat Francis, who was a longtime coach with the Rangers, and Guy Lafleur, Mr. Canadian, who was one of the all-time great Montreal Canadian hockey players. And then some other personalities, Fred Hickman, who was a sportcaster for ESPN and CNN. He had a longtime show with his partner, Nick Charles. I used to watch them all the time. Unfortunately, he passed away too young. Ernie Shavers, a heavyweight boxer who fought with Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes, among others, in the heavyweight division. And lastly, a famous golfer, Tom Weiskopf, who won a few majors in his life. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to Bronco family lost a couple as well. Most recently, Ronnie Hillman, a running back. Tony Jones, and most recognizable here, Demarius Thomas, all lost their lives this past year. From my good friend up in the sky, Michael Briggs, who was a big wrestling fan. Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, passed away. He was one of his favorite wrestlers. So rest in peace to all those sports uh, icons and legends. And they will be missed. I think it, any other you guys want to hit up real quick? If not, we will get our New Year's thoughts out, and we'll wrap the show up. All right. I think it's been a fun hour and a half with you guys, wrapping up the year in 2022. Good, mostly good, fun stories. I had a lot of fun doing it again with you guys this year. That being said, I got 3 days to New Year's, and next Wednesday show will be in 2023, fellas. Going to be a nice, fun year for us all. I look forward to spending the next year with you guys and starting the year off on a bang. So happy New Year to everybody. Those are my usually I go last, but since I'm taking Kurt's place, I'm going first. So that's my New Year's thoughts. Let's go to Billy Madison, Ryan Scoop.
Guys, obviously it's been a fantastic year in sports. Not just as a Yankees, Eagles, and Flyers fan, but just as a fan of sports in general. There's been a lot of exciting things to watch, both on the field or court and off. But I want to thank someone in particular. I want to thank my friend and fraternity brother, Rachel Walters. 8.5 months ago, she walked up to me at a fraternity event and said, "Hey, I work for this podcast, and they're looking for somebody who could potentially get involved. Would you have any interest?" And now I've been on here for 8.5 months. So I want to thank Rachel for getting me involved with this. This has become like a second family. I look forward to this every week. I enjoy our interactions in between the shows. I'm very grateful for my position here, and I'm looking forward to a lot more to come.
And shame on me, Ryan, but it's a year in review show. We welcome you to the K&K Sports Show and look forward to going into 2023 with you as well.
I appreciate all of you.
Again, the water boy, Paul Rosen, your final New Year's thoughts.
As you get older, days go by so quickly, much quicker than when guys like Brian and Carson. So treasure each and every moment. Believe me, the next thing you know, it's 30 years later. But it's been an honor and a privilege to be on the show each and every week with you guys, with Kurt, with Sis, Joey Clams, and I just want to thank Kenny and Kurt for reaching out and making me feel like, hey, there's a vehicle to express how I feel about sports, and don't think a day doesn't go by where I don't appreciate that, Kenny.
Thank you.
As you're welcome, and as the year draws to a close, it's going to be a fantastic weekend. We have the playoffs coming up. We have New Year's Day, which usually is all about college football bowls, but it will be a unbelievable Sunday because we are now looking at the possibility of Sis, Kenny, and my New York Football Giants possibly winning and getting into the playoffs, which there was no Giant fan alive, and if they said they would be lying, getting into the playoffs this year in a first year of a rebuild. So I am so looking forward to this weekend. I want to wish everyone a safe and happy and healthy New Year, and let's do it next week.
Thank you, Paul. And likewise, the show would not be what it is without different personalities and different people from around the United States. You got Paul down there in the South. You got Ryan up there in the North and Carson up there in the North. And you got me on the East Coast and Kurt up there in New York area. So that's a uniqueness that's brought to the show. Our good friends, and Keith saying, thanks for the wrap up, gentlemen. Great show. Our good friends out there in Colorado and Montana and just everywhere around the United States. And all joking aside, the show is what brought us all together. And, and I'm going to get to Carson in a second, but Carson's shows what brought me and him together.
Mhm.
So, it's a small world, and, I cherish it each and every day, and, look forward to 2023 again with you guys. But final words are going to come from Happy Gilmore himself, the legend, Carson Shear.
Yeah, like Kenny just said, Kenny was stopping by one of my live streams a few years ago, and he said, "Hey, you seem to like sports. You want to come on one of our shows one time?" And I said yes, and I didn't know what to expect. And I think it's been almost 3 years I've been on the K&K Sports Talk Show. So it's been awesome.
One show became 2,
Yeah.
and 2 became 3 years.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm very thankful Kenny stopped by one of my shows, because if, it would have never happened if he never reached out. So I'm very glad he did. Shout out to you guys, the whole K&K crew. It's been an awesome couple of years. Looking forward to many more shows with you guys in 2023. Happy New Year as well. Hopefully you guys all had a great holiday. And enjoy the games this week. Looking forward to Wits and Wagers, and Happy New Year, everybody.
And Carson, where can we find you? Where I found you, tell everybody where I found you.
Yeah, if you guys like casino content, roulette, craps, blackjack, slots, the whole 9 yards, we do a couple live streams a couple nights a week. You can find me on Facebook now. Just search up Ticket Time. You'll find me over there, as well as YouTube as well.
Thank you again, everybody. Thank you to our audience. Happy New Year to all, and we'll see everyone in 2023. Thank you, everybody.